From the levellers to those who trespassed at Kinder Scout, ordinary people are the ones who change history.
Justice is our liberation.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Ananya from South Asia Solidarity Group, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this event that we've organised alongside Survival International for the People's Summit on a really pressing climate justice issue of our times, and that is the environmental destruction, including coal mining, and the widespread dispossession caused by transnational corporations, which are working with India's BJP government. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just last week been at COP26 greenwashing the corporate crimes that he is responsible for. But today's meeting, we will be focusing on people's resistance, and particularly on Adivasi indigenous communities' resistance in the face of intense repression. So we have an amazing lineup of speakers from the front lines of these struggles, but I'm just going to very briefly mention the organising groups. So South Asia Solidarity Group is a UK-based organisation building solidarities with people's struggles in South Asia for justice and democracy, including against British corporates such as Vedanta and Global Coal Management. And since Modi came to power, we've been particularly active in supporting the resistance against Hindu supremacist fascism in India. We have organised mass demonstrations of diaspora groups in the UK, including against the Citizenship Amendment Act and the annexation of Kashmir. And our co-organisers for this event are Survival International, which helps Indigenous people to defend their lives and lands and determine their own futures. Survival has recently launched a campaign amplifying Adivasi resistance to coal mining and exposing the repression of Adivasi land and rights defenders, including Hidme Markam, an Adivasi woman who was incarcerated 8 months ago today, in fact. So on behalf of all of us on the organising team, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all the People's Summit organisers and also to the fantastic translators and interpreters who'll be providing translation between Hindi, Santali, Kuruk and English. And the event is accessible in all of these languages. So please do make sure that you're listening in the right language just by clicking the little round icon at the bottom of the screen. It says interpretation. We'll be posting these instructions in the chat as well every time that the language changes. There's also a link in the chat for subtitles, or you can click the CC button at the bottom of the screen. And we will be taking questions at the end of the session, which you can post in the chat. And we may also answer in the chat if we're running short of time. And we're also very excited to have Ruby Hembrom chairing this meeting. So Ruby is an Adivasi cultural documentarian and practitioner. She is the founder and director of Adivani First Voices, which is an archiving and publishing outfit of and by Adivasis. So I'm just going to hand over to Ruby right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. We're delighted to start off our session immediately with Priya Pillai, who has been working on environmental and social justice issues for almost 2 decades now. She works closely with grassroots movements and non-governmental organizations that focus on energy, climate justice, and forest rights. She's worked with the Right to Food campaign, Oxfam, ActionAid, and Greenpeace. She has a post-graduation in law and is currently pursuing a PhD on the socio-ecological impacts of large-scale renewable energy projects in India in the absence of a regulatory framework. Welcome, Priya, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be part of this important discussion. Very quickly, I'll just screen share and share my presentation with all of you. Sorry. Just when you want to. Okay, there seems to be a small issue. Do you want to screen share it from there? I don't know. I'm unable to. 1 second. Ananya, do you want to just screen share it?
I'll have a look, sorry.
1 second.
We could give you a moment. Priya.
I'm sorry, I'm just, why this is not working. Okay, let me try now. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to say, I've just made it so participants can screen share, so hopefully that will help.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not able to increase the size of the presentation. So basically, quickly, I will be talking very briefly about the backdrop and the context. Before we begin, I just wanted to throw some statistics at you. So in the quarter with beginning April to June in 2020, India's GDP fell by 24%. Again, India was rated basically among the bottom 5 countries on the Environmental Performance Index this same year. Parallelly, if you see, Adani and Ambani, who are large corporations in India, very close to the ruling dispensation, to the Modi government, they have again come on, they both stand number 1 and number 2 on the Forbes list, basically, of richest Indians. You know, and in the same year, that is this year, we've seen BJP, which is the ruling dispensation in the country, receiving 93% of corporate donations between 2016 and 2018. And this was basically reported by the Association for Democratic Reforms in 2020. So these are not just statistics. It clearly spells out the context in which environmental movements, indigenous communities, and Dalits in this country have been fighting for their rights, fighting to save the natural resources of this country, fighting climate change through proxy battles, and trying to kind of see where they fit into the whole scheme of things, whether it's regarding the rights that they hold vis-a-vis their land, their human rights, which are grossly being violated. Somebody initially spoke about the shrinking democratic space in the country, which has had a huge impact on, you know, on not only the rights of the communities, the Adivasis and the Dalits of this country, but it has actually led to a very, very strong nexus between the government and the corporations. The communal atmosphere that's been created in this country has actually benefited the government and the corporations of this country. You know, the government to stay in power using the communal card, and the corporations to kind of get land, water, and forests at throwaway you know, prices from the government, and the impunity to act and to violate rights of communities in this country. So when we talk about climate change, the whole debate in this country is, when you go on the ground, it is not about, you know, the whole Western concept of, you know, environment is not, and climate change does not apply to India. It's basically the debate on the ground is about development versus environment. And what matters to people on the ground is livelihoods, the displacement they face, land alienation, air pollution, water contamination, attacks on their culture and dignity. And you will see that if you look at the movements around the country, whether it's been the Niyamgiri movement, the Mahan movement, the POSCO movement, all these movements have sprung up against injustices. And that is core to the climate movement, whereas it's not really recognized as battles, or that are being fought by communities to save forest things, or something that is totally kind of a battle to fight climate change. This is a very broad map of, if you look at this is India, and you see the central Indian map. I'm showing you this because this is where most of the, apart from, of course, the northeastern part of the country and the Western Ghats region of the country, this is mostly where there has been a huge overlap of indigenous communities. This is the mineral belt of the country. This is also the forested belt. So these 5 states, that's Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, these are the states where you will find this overlap of indigenous communities, forests. This is also where you will find a large number of corporations operating here. This is incidentally also one of the largest conflicted zones, where you will find most of the coal mining conflicts are existent in this part of the country also. The fight here is mostly about the resource, the corporations wanting to kind of take control of the resource. There's been multiple battles. The Mahan fight, where people fought in Singrauli district of Madhya Pradesh to save their forests and their land. The Niyamgiri fight, which everybody knows about, again was a battle to save their forests, their dignity, their right over common resources, and all of that. Again, though none of these fights are really categorized as fights to save essential forest sinks, and in that sense fights to save the rights of communities, as well as the fight against climate change, because they are seen here, the whole climate justice angle comes in here, because climate is seen in a silo, and the climate change battles are seen in a silo. The fights by communities on the ground to save these essential forest sinks, to save natural resources, to save water, to save forests, is not seen as a climate battle. And as we look at solutions, as we move, and we debate at the COP about net zero, we talk about renewable energy, and each country, including India, talks about raising their, their renewable energy targets, as opposed to fossil fuel investment in fossil fuel. What we are doing is basically moving, investment from one sector, that is fossil fuel sector, and pushing it into large scale renewables. And I'd also like to talk a little bit about, this solution. Is large scale renewable energy any different from fossil fuel? Having engaged with this issue in the last 4-5 years very closely, one has seen that the large scale renewable energy paradigm in this country is no different. Actually, I can kind of, with a lot of evidence and a lot of conviction, now say that the large scale renewable energy paradigm is no different from the fossil fuel paradigm, and it operates very similarly. The players are largely the same. So for example, if you have Adani, if you have people in Jharkhand and Orissa fighting Adani and Ambani, fossil fuel mines, coal mines, you again have, Adani coming and trying to set up a big solar plant in Tamil Nadu, where you will find land grab. This image is from basically from Tamil Nadu, where again, the Indian government keeps talking about 175 gigawatts of solar, and this is seen as the green solution, the solution to climate change. But what is happening to the community? What is happening to people's land and resources? Again, you will find that when Adani sets up a solar plant in Tamil Nadu, basically taking away 4,000 acres of land, it engages in land grab in the same way that it would engage in land grab in a fossil fuel sector. So where is the whole aspect of social justice? Same with water. We've seen this image. If you look at it, this is clearly an image of every household in Kamudi village in Tamil Nadu, where the Adani solar plant is located. You will find a similar kind of a thing with where women actually carry water. They go and buy water. And
sorry, Priya.
Sorry.
uh, we have like 1 minute. Perhaps we can take this in the question and answer round. So just that.
What I'm trying to drive is basically the fact that there are a lot of challenges faced, but the most important thing is that this whole process of decarbonization, which is increasingly led by the corporations, have to be aligned, with social justice. We need to think whether the larger environmental groups acknowledge, support, and integrate social justice fights as a fight that is integral to the broader climate agenda. Also, we need to understand that the transition process will actually reorder social hierarchies, and it gives us an opportunity, not just for emission reduction and building resilience, but also to integrate social justice like land rights and water rights and forest rights into this whole paradigm. And the reality, unfortunately, is that as long as mitigation of climate change is profit driven and it's based on market driven solutions, the problems associated with fossil fuel will continue to be replicated in renewable as well. And I want to leave you with this last image of Kuni Sikaka on the left, and these two images show the strong nexus between government and corporations. The Modi government has been diluting the environmental regulatory framework to allow single window clearances and fast track clearances, totally disregarding the Forest Rights Act, the right of the communities. Nowhere is free and prior informed consent of communities taken. None of the processes are followed. Instead, what happens is basically you see that the human faces who are fighting for climate change are subject to arbitrary and draconian laws, where the National Security Act, sedition, UAPA have been indiscriminately used against people. We know, even as I speak today, we know that Sudha Bharadwaj is in jail. Kuni Sikaka, you see in this image, she was falsely branded as a Maoist and taken away by the security forces. So as we've seen how the state and the corporations have been in nexus and have been using the law of the land. They've been twisting it and they've been using it with impunity to kind of attack communities, indigenous communities, and to take away their land and resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you for setting the stage. Now we turn to a video from Shakuntala, who's a member of the Haste Varanya Banchao Sangharsh Samiti, an organization that has been resisting coal mining in their forests for the past decade.
सदियों से आदिवासी लोगों का घर है। यहाँ के आदिवासी एक दूसरे के साथ, जंगल के साथ और आसपास के वन्य जीवों के साथ सद्भावना से रहते आ रहे हैं। पर आज कई दिनों से सूरज पक्षियों की राग से अलविदा नहीं बोलता, बल्कि ट्रकों के शोर से रसातल में डूब जाता है। इन लोगों के जंगल, पवित्र स्थानों और उनके जीने के तरीके को नष्ट करने के लिए खनन कंपनियों ने सरकार के साथ हाथ जोड़े हैं, सिर्फ इसलिए ताकि निजी कंपनियां मुनाफा बनाती रहें। विस्थापन और तबाही, एक विकास जो इन्होंने कभी नहीं मांगा था।
जमीन किसका है? जंगल जमीन किसका है?
यह उनके उम्मीद, संघर्ष और प्रतिरोध की एक कहानी है।
मानव जितने भी हैं, मनुष्य हैं, मैं उनको यही संदेश देना मैं चाहूँगी कि जो हम लोग जो हंसदों की जंगल की जो लड़ाई लड़ रहे हैं हम लोग, और बचाना चाह रहे हैं, इसलिए बचाना चाह रहे हैं क्योंकि ये घने जंगल है तो जीवन है, और जंगल नहीं रहेगा तो जीवन भी समाप्त हो जाएगी। हम लोग देख रहे हैं कई तरह की मौसम, अभी बेमौसम बारिश आ रही है, बेमौसम ओला गिर रहा है, कभी आंधी आ रही है, तूफान आ रही है। ये सब जो पर्यावरण जो अपने संतुलन नहीं बना पा रही है क्योंकि जंगल कट रही है। और मैं ये कहना चाहूँगी कि यदि जंगल कटती है तो मानव जीवन के ऊपर बहुत ही बुरा प्रभाव पड़ेगा। अभी हम देख रहे हैं जो ऊंची ऊंची जंगल है, जहाँ जंगल है वहाँ बारिश अपने तरफ जो खींच के जो जंगल लाती है, जो ऊंची ऊंची पहाड़ है उस मानसून को, और वहाँ समय पे बारिश होती है। पर कुछ सालों से हम देख रहे हैं कि ये बारिश की जो समय होती है ये बदलाव हो रही है, गर्मी भी बेमौसम पड़ने लगती है। अभी जैसे अक्टूबर महीना की शुरुआत में ही पहले बहुत ठंड लगने लगती थी, पर अब ठंड अब तक नहीं लगी है, अक्टूबर महीने तक ठंड नहीं लग रही है। नहीं तो बिना आग जलाए और बिना कम्बल स्वेटर पहने हम गांव में भी रह नहीं पाते थे। ये सब पेड़ काटने के बजाय है। तो मैं यही कहना चाहूँगी, जंगल जितने हमें मानव जीवन को ज़रूरत है उतना ही जंगल को भी बचाना ज़रूरी है। जब जंगल रहेगी तभी संभव है मानव जीवन का इस पृथ्वी पे रहना। कहीं पावर प्लांट लगा है तो वहाँ से जो पानी, प्रदूषित पानी बहती है, और उस क्षेत्र जहाँ भी जा रहा है पावर प्लांट का पानी, वो नदी में जो रहती है जीव जंतु, जो गर्म पानी जाती है जैसे कोई केमिकल मिला हुआ, तो वो जो नदी में जीव जंतु रहती है वो भी तो समाप्त हो जाती है। अगर हम अपने वातावरण जो प्रदूषित हो रहा है इसके बारे में हमने नहीं सोचा और हम इनके लिए कुछ कदम नहीं उठाए जंगल पहाड़ रोकने के लिए, तो मानव जीवन कुछ ही दिनों के बाद समाप्त हो जाएगी।
क्योंकि खदान के आने से हम जो ग्रामीण क्षेत्र है, जंगल है, ये सब विनाश हो जाएगा। खदान से कुछ भी लाभ नहीं होगा, तो हम जंगल ज़मीन को हम उसके लिए देना नहीं चाहते हैं खदान के लिए किसी भी हालत में। कहे कि जंगल से ही ये आदिवासियों की जीवन यापन हो रहा है। हर मौसम में कुछ ना कुछ फसल मिलती है। अभी जो बरसात का सीजन है इसमें पुटू आ रहा है, ये गांव की मशरूम है, और कई तरह की जो साग भाजी है ये मिल रहा है। ये जो गांव के लोगों को खरीदना नहीं पड़ता है सब्जी का। और इस जंगल से नाना प्रकार की जड़ी बूटी है जो हमारे जीवन के लिए बहुत ही आवश्यकता होती है। तो इस जंगल को हम बिल्कुल ही देना नहीं चाहते हैं। यदि खदान खुलती है तो जंगल में कुछ भी नहीं रहेगा, सब उजड़ जाएगा।
धरती ये माँ है, कोई जितने हैं सब तो उसके हम सब क्या है बेटे बेटियां हैं। तो हम अपने माँ को बर्बाद होते थोड़ी देख सकते हैं। हम उसके लिए जान भी दे सकते हैं, पर हम उसे छीनने नहीं देंगे, न किसी को हम देंगे भी नहीं, न बसाहट न खदान। हम खदान का विरोध करते हैं, पहले भी किए थे, अभी करते हैं, भविष्य में भी करते हैं।
हम किसी के जायदाद, किसी के जमीन, किसी भी चीज़ को हम बिना पूछे नहीं ले जाते हैं। अगर ये अदानी बिना ग्राम वासियों की, पूरा गांव की, बिना ग्राम सभा की सहमति का अगर ये ज़बरदस्ती लेना चाहेगी तो हम उससे लड़ाई करने के लिए तैयार हैं। हम जो हमारे पास जो भी है, हमारे पास बंदूक नहीं है तो क्या हुआ, हमारे पास भी तो हथियार है। ये हमारे पास ग्राम सभा है और अगर ग्राम वालों की बिना अनुमति का ये ज़बरदस्ती करती है, हम लड़ने के लिए उससे तैयार हैं। अंग्रेज़ों से तो हमारी देश आज़ाद हुई, पर गरीबों आदिवासियों के लिए आज़ादी नहीं है, क्योंकि आदिवासियों के ज़मीन जब चाहे तब सरकार किसी उद्योग के लिए, किसी कोयला खनन के लिए दे रही है, तो हम आज़ाद नहीं हैं आदिवासी। हम इस गुलामी को हम स्वीकार कभी नहीं करते, और हम इस गुलामी के लिए हम जैसा भी हो, हम अपना तन मन लगा के हम अपन जीवन भी हम निछावर कर देंगे, लेकिन हम इस गुलामी फिर से हम नहीं होने देंगे। अपना जंगल ज़मीन हम देने नहीं चाहेंगे। अगर जंगल ज़मीन हम दे देते हैं तो हम फिर से गुलामी हो जाएंगे, बेघर बढ़ जाएंगे, और आदिवासियों का जो अस्तित्व है वो मिट जाएगी, हमारी पहचान ही नहीं रहेगी, तो हमारे लिए अधिकार कहाँ से रहेगा। तो हम बिल्कुल ही देना नहीं चाहते हैं। हम पूरी तरह से हम इसका विरोध हैं। अगर ये नहीं मानती है तो हम लड़ाई के लिए हम तैयार हैं, चाहे हमारी जान चल जाए या हमारे लिए कुछ भी करना पड़े, पर हम तैयार हैं, पर अपना ज़मीन देने के लिए हम तैयार नहीं हैं। मेरी नाम है शकुंतला, मैं खेती गांव की हूँ।
We are honored to have Dayamani Barla in our midst. She is an Adivasi journalist and activist from the Indian state of Jharkhand. She is notable for her activism in opposing ArcelorMittal, a multinational company which wants to invest 8.79 US billion to set up one of the world's biggest steel plants in the area, grabbing Adivasi land, dispossessing the people of 40 Adivasi villages, and destroying forests. Dayamani Di also writes for a popular Hindi newspaper, Prabhat Khabar, which brings attention to the myriad struggles of the Munda people and other Adivasi communities in the Jharkhand region. She has won a numerous number of prestigious awards for journalism and is the national president of Indian Social Action Forum. Johar Dayamani Ji, स्वागत है, अब अपनी बात रखें. दयामनी जी.
हाँ, सभी साथियों को मेरा जोहार। और क्लाइमेट चेंज पर आज जो हम लोग क्लाइमेट जस्टिस पर चर्चा करने के लिए जो हम लोग कई देशों के साथी एकत्र हुए हैं, सभी साथियों को मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ, आयोजकों को विशेष धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ। जहाँ तक झारखंड में आदिवासियों के राइट्स का सवाल है, मैं ये यहाँ से शुरू करना चाहती हूँ कि जल जंगल जमीन और यहाँ का जो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेस है, आदिवासी
says that they're very important for Adivasi people.
इसी जल जंगल जमीन के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है, इसलिए कि जल जंगल जमीन को आबाद करने का, खेती लायक जमीन बनाने का,
The land and the property and villages are of utmost importance. Even during the British rule and colonization, these lands had to be fought for. उन्होंने खुद ही जमीन साफ किया, जंगल साफ किया, इसलिए आज जमीन पर उनका अपना ट्रेडिशनल राइट्स है. And they have traditional rights which were fought for also during the British colonization in the past. Jungles, the lands, we did not pay tax, but it was only when the British came that the indigenous people, Adivasi people, had to then give tax. From 17,000 to the 1800s,
और उसके साथ ही आपका फूलो झानो, आदिवासी महिलाएं भी उस संघर्ष में कंधा से कंधा मिला.
They fought side by side against the British for this reason, because in our land, in our villages, had the right, and it was our dream to keep the land to us. When the country was became independent, People still look back today.
और बिरसा मुंडा के संघर्ष के बाद ही आदिवासियों के लिए यहाँ पर सीएनटी एक्ट बना, एसपीटी एक्ट बना। और इस सीएनटी एक्ट एसपीटी एक्ट में कहा गया कि आदिवासियों का जंगल को, जमीन को, नदी और पहाड़ को और आदिवासी
The Adivasi jungle, hills and mountains, property belongs to them, whether it's not to the companies nor the government.
ग्राम सभा की सहमति के बिना कोई भी जमीन जबरन खरीद नहीं सकता है, कोई ले नहीं सकता है।
No one can take it away from them.
सीएनटी एक्ट और एसपीटी एक्ट ये हमारा जमीन बचाने का सुरक्षा।
This is a way of protecting our land jungles in Jharkhand.
जनजातियां हैं, सभी 32 आदिवासी जो समुदाय हैं, सबका भाषा और संस्कृति,
Everybody's language
पूरी तरह से नेचर पर ही है
and their lives depend upon the nature of forests
कल्चर हमारा संपत्ति नहीं,
and the heritage of their land.
होता है। लेकिन आदिवासी समुदाय में हम लोग हेरिटेज को सेलेबल नहीं मानते हैं और आज भी जल, जंगल, जमीन पर, नदी और
The water, the hills, the mountains,
जल स्रोत है, वाटर
the water bodies, it's our community rights.
के आधार पर ही आज भी हमारा समाज पूरी तरह से कलेक्टिव रूप से ही
Our ways are even today in a collective way, in the name of so-called development. Jharkhand is calling it development, but the mining companies are frittering away the jungles and lands.
डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट हैं, उसमें 21 लाख हेक्टेयर आपका एग्रीकल्चर लैंड पूरी तरह से डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया है।
They have got rid of hectares of jungle forests in the name of development.
आज की तारीख में झारखंड में जो हम
Up to today, water is life, and this is the truth. Without water, we cannot survive, we cannot sustain life. But since mining has started in Jharkhand, coal mining in those areas where the rivers are being contaminated,
आज वहाँ पूरी तरह से वहाँ का पानी प्रदूषित हो गया है, वो इलाका प्रदूषित हो गया है,
those areas
इलाका का जितना भी जंगल है वो डिस्ट्रॉय
and jungles in that are being destroyed as we speak.
इलाका को छोड़ के और दूसरे इलाके हैं, उस इलाके से भी पूरे झारखंड की बात करेंगे तो आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस यहाँ 5 करोड़ से ज्यादा पॉपुलेशन डिस्प्लेस हो गई है।
After independence, 5 crore of the population got displaced, and the displaced people, even today, are not recognized. Their language and ways have been destroyed. And their whole livelihood and lives depended on nature. Now, as many displaced people there are in Delhi, Mumbai, big cities, they migrated to the big cities. But in the name of development, people are
और बाहर की जो आबादी आ रही है, यहाँ की जो आबादी है आदिवासी आबादी, उसको भी डिस्प्लेस कर रही है।
The displacement of Adivasi peoples is immense.
सेंसस के आधार पर जहाँ पर झारखंड में आदिवासियों की जो जनसंख्या थी, कभी यहाँ पर हम 60% हुआ करते थे, आज की तारीख में ओनली हम लोग 26.2% है। हर 10 साल का
26.2% of the population.
आदिवासी यहाँ पर पॉपुलेशन
is decreasing by that amount.
भारत का जितना भी चाहे तो हम कहेंगे इस लोकतंत्र में राजनीतिक व्यवस्था, एजुकेशन का सिस्टम, हेल्थ सिस्टम,
In India, the education and health system and developmental projects, which you talk about a right to these projects,
तमाम चीज इसी पर निर्भर करता है। लेकिन आज की तारीख में जिस तरह से यहाँ के ट्राइबलों के यहाँ से
but the tribal people of the jungle and land,
माइनॉरिटी हो रहे हैं। तो मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि आज
माफ कीजिएगा, 1 मिनट बाकी है।
आज 2014 के बाद यहाँ का CNT
2014
हो रहा है और आज की तारीख में जो हमारा यहाँ 5वीं अनुसूची था उसका भी वायलेशन हो रहा है, ग्राम सभा के अधिकार का वायलेशन हो रहा है। और जब हम अपने हक की बात करते हैं, अपना लैंड वाटर फॉरेस्ट की रक्षा की बात,
land and the forest, water forests, are what the Modi government after 2004 is to raise their voices and highlight the issues.
आदिवासी समाज के साथ और माइनॉरिटी समाज के तमाम जो संस्था हैं उनको बंद करने का काम कर रहा है। और आज की तारीख में मैं अभी
And up to today, our land, our property that belong to us and our collective made it a land bank, and Adani has and corporates have been exploiting this. The biggest corporates are using and abusing their power. I'm appealing to all the people of the world, of the country. When we're talking about climate justice, please think about the indigenous people, the Adivasi people. Step by step, we need to unite the whole state, country need to get together and hold people, the governments, accountable. The entire country, India, in the name of climate justice. Only then can we talk about climate justice.
Johar, बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया. We now have Phillip Kujur with us. We have a pre-recorded video from him, even though he is with us live, and he will be able to speak some more during the question and answer round. Phillip Kujur is an Adivasi activist who has been working for social and environmental justice with mining affected communities for the last 25 years. Phillip has especially focused on coal and bauxite mining issues in Jharkhand, India, to protect community rights over natural resources and to protect Adivasi communities' distinct culture, identity, and livelihood.
मेरा नाम फिलिप कुजूर है और मैं आदिवासी हूँ। ये जो आप देख रहे हैं पीछे, मेरे पीछे में पूरा मगध प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है कोल माइंस का, और बाजू में इधर पूरा खेत है। ये पूरा हरा भरा जगह था। यहाँ के लोग जो हैं खेती पर निर्भर था, उनकी अपनी परंपरा, अपना संस्कृति था, एक साथ बैठते उठते थे। आज 2016 के बाद यहाँ का पूरा ज्योग्राफी चेंज हो गया। ये बड़े खदान आकर के यहाँ के लोगों को डिस्प्लेस कर रहे हैं, और कभी पॉल्यूशन नहीं देखा था, यहाँ के लोग को पॉल्यूशन मिल रहा है। सरकार का ये कहना है कि ये एशिया का सबसे बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट है, और मैं जहाँ बैठा हूँ ये मगध प्रोजेक्ट है, और मगध प्रोजेक्ट से हज़ारों लोग का ज़मीन जो ज़मीन ले करके यहाँ जो नेशनल डेवलपमेंट के नाम पे हमारे आदिवासी लोग 300 साल से लड़ रहे हैं कि विकास के यही मॉडल के खिलाफ, कि आप जो स्टैब्लिश है, जो सभ्यता है, संस्कृति है, उनका जो आपस का सामंजस्य है, जो समाज चलता है, जीवन जीने का तरीका है, उसको ख़त्म करो सिर्फ और सिर्फ नेशनल इंटरेस्ट के नाम। मूल्य चुका रहा है। एक पूरा समाज का जो ताना बना था, उसका सिस्टम था, प्रकृति के साथ उनका रिश्ता, उनका कल्चर, एक जगह में उनका देवस्थल है, मतलब सरना है, उनका कब्रिस्तान है, तो सारे चीज़ को जो उनका डिग्निटी है, उनका सम्मान का बात है, उसको सारे चीज़ को ख़त्म करके ये खदान, ये सारे चीज़ एक खदान के लिए सेक्रीफाइस कर रहे हैं। ये सारा चीज़ जो तोड़ करके ये कॉलोनी बनाने का जो धंधा है, यहाँ बाहर से लोग आकर के अपना कॉलोनी बनाएंगे, यहाँ का कल्चर को उनके द्वारा डोमिनेट किया जाएगा। तो ये जो बहुत बड़ा संकट है, ये देश का डेवलपमेंट के लिए बहुत खतरा है। इसको हम डेवलपमेंट नहीं बोल सकते हैं। डेवलपमेंट के नाम से ये पूरा, ये एक तो प्रकृति का बर्बादी है। यहाँ का जो आदिवासी लोग हैं, उनका ज़िंदगी का, जीवन जीने का जो तरीका है, जो प्रकृति के साथ जीते हैं, प्रकृति जिनको माई बाप है प्रकृति, जंगल से, ज़मीन से जो उनको मिलता है, उनका जो ज़िंदगी चलता है, उसको सारे चीज़ को ख़त्म करके ये खदान के द्वारा लोगों को सुविधा, लोगों का पेट भरना, मतलब लोगों का पॉकेट भरना, बड़े बड़े अफसर, बड़े बड़े मंत्री, बड़े बड़े लोग का ये जो अन्यायिक, मतलब एक तरीके से ये विकास का जो हिस्सेदारी है, वो समान विकास का बात नहीं है। और ये जो सवाल हम जो खड़ा कर रहे हैं, ये महत्वपूर्ण है। जो पूरा जो आदिवासी क्षेत्र है ख़त्म हो रहा है। आदिवासी लोग का ज़िंदगी जहाँ जल जंगल ज़मीन से चलता था, वो सब सारे चीज़ ख़त्म होने वाले हैं। अब आदिवासी लोग को कहाँ शिफ्ट करके कहाँ बसाओगे? इसका मतलब है कि आदिवासी एक ओवरबर्डन, जैसे ओवरबर्डन आप देख रहे हैं, ये ओवरबर्डन की तरह आदिवासी कम्युनिटी है। इनको ख़त्म करो, इसको बर्बाद करो, इनका ज़िंदगी ख़राब करो, ये खुद मर जाएंगे और ये ओवरबर्डन की तरह इसको डंप करके छोड़ दो। अभी जो देश का सरकार है, विकास के नाम पर अलग अलग कंपनियों से और अलग अलग कंपनियों को, विशेषकर अडानी और अंबानी के पॉलिसी पर काम कर रहा है। देश का पार्लियामेंट काम नहीं कर रहा है। और ये जो योजनाएं चलाई जा रही है, 35 किलो अनाज दे दो, एक PM आवास दे दो, और एक मोदी खाना दे दो, मतलब उसको लेटरिन घर बोलते हैं। खाओ पियो, खाओ सो और हगो, लेटरिन करने जाओ, ये जानवर का काम होता है। और उसका इस्तेमाल, दिमाग का इस्तेमाल नहीं करना है। यहाँ के आदिवासियों को एक मानसिक गुलामी की तरफ ये मोदी सरकार की योजनाएं, पॉलिसी जो लेके जा रही है, इसका मतलब ये है कि आप जो संपत्ति, जो संसाधन आदिवासी क्षेत्र में है, चाहे तो देश का ये सिर्फ चतरा का बात नहीं है, देश के अंदर जहाँ भी आदिवासी क्षेत्र है, वहाँ मिनरल्स हैं। वहाँ आदिवासी लोग को कि मानसिक गुलाम बनाओ, प्रकृति को बचा के रख सकते हैं। प्रकृति को बचाने का मतलब दुनिया के सारे जीव जंतु से लेकर के सारी सभ्यता को बचाने की बात करते हैं। उसका कोई वैल्यू नहीं, और ये चाहते हैं कि ये आदिवासी लोग मर जाए। मानसिक गुलामी के साथ साथ वो इतना पियंकड़ हो जाए, दारू पिए और मर जाए, ख़त्म कर दे। इसीलिए जो ओवरबर्डन देख रहे हैं आप, ये आदिवासी लोग ओवरबर्डन के रूप में दिखते हैं मोदी को। दुनिया को अगर ज़िंदगी दे सकता है एक आदिवासी दर्शन, इसको आदिवासी विचार हम बोलते हैं, आदिवासी विचार ही दुनिया को बचा सकता है। एक ही रास्ता है, आप एक ही रास्ता अभी देखो आदिवासी लोग का ज़िंदगी, उसी रास्ता से आप अपना ज़िंदगी बचा सकते हो। नहीं तो आप जाओगे ऑक्सीजन के लिए, वो ऑक्सीजन बूथ में जाना पड़ेगा। जो प्रकृति है, पेड़ पौधा है, जो आदिवासी लोग का ज़िंदगी का एक हिस्सा है, उसको ख़त्म कर रहे हो एक खदान से, फैक्ट्री से, और बड़े बड़े पावर प्लांट लगा करके। ये सब चीज़ आपका ज़िंदगी को ख़त्म कर देगा। और सीधा सा बात है, आप सुधरो, हम तो जाने वाले हैं, आप सुधरो, नहीं तो आपको प्रकृति सुधार देगा।
We're really delighted to have Disha Ravi with us next, a 23-year-old climate environmental activist with Fridays for Future India. She became an activist after she saw her family impacted by the water crisis. She's best known for advocating for better policies and governance for the climate and environmental sector. She is passionate about ensuring the voices from MAPA, most affected people and areas are represented in climate conversations and negotiations. Welcome, Disha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ruby. And firstly, I just wanted to say it's such a huge honor to be speaking here among so many people I consider my idols. Thank you so much for having me. And I think a lot of everything that's been spoken has already been covered, and so I don't know what else I can't even cover. But since we are talking about COP26, I wanted to talk about how I'm already disappointed with what India has promised, because I know that these climate negotiations mean that world leaders will get to negotiate with our lives. And it's often those of us in India, and especially Adivasi communities and Dalit communities and Bahujan communities, that will be pushed under the bus. In a recent interview, the Minister of Environment, Bhupendra Yadav, actually said that his message at COP26 is slogan se zyada, we want action. But when in his life did he have to raise slogans? I have never seen him raise slogans for anything, because he is not someone who isn't in a position of power. He's in the position to make decisions that will impact all our lives. And this isn't limited to COP26. He had that power before COP26. I mean, he will continue having that power after COP26. And this is nothing but an attempt from these so-called leaders to steal our language and greenwash us into thinking that he didn't have power, because he clearly doesn't understand what it means to be an environmental minister, because everything the Ministry of Environment has done in the past few years has been dilute norms like the EIA, the Forest Conservation Act, and recently the Coastal Regulation Zone. So this is going to impact people who are already vulnerable to the climate crisis first. And I don't think they aren't doing anything. I think they're doing a lot. And what they're doing is actively making sure that the climate crisis is getting worse. And he's talking about raising slogans and wanting action, but he's had the power to take action. He's had the power to not cause harm. He's had the power to do good, but instead he's done everything opposite. I don't think he understands what it means to equitably distribute resources. And these may seem like big words, right? Equitable. For him, especially for someone who's never had to struggle for anything in his life. We ask for equitable climate justice or equitable environmental justice because we identify that different sections of the society are entitled to different kinds of resources and in different quantities. But we also understand the role of each person and the role they play in our community. And it's understanding that farmers may need more land because they're the ones growing crops. And it's understanding that Adivasis are the true owners of forests because they are indigenous to that land. And it's understanding that women and other marginalized communities should be given priority while recognizing that they are as important as men. And it is sharing our common resources such as water, forests, and produce it creates without poisoning it. And this is the opposite of what India has been doing. We have been opening up coal mines, we have been auctioning them off, and all of this is coming at the cost of people who are in these regions. And anytime someone raises their voice against these issues, they are punished for it. And land has been looted away from indigenous people. And I think like so many people who spoke about it already covered that. So this is a historical injustice that people have had to face. The only issue that has changed is the oppressor has changed from being white people.
तरफ कुछ लोगों को
the ruling party at the moment, and we've broken away so many of our
सारे
forests.
काम हो
We've
रहे हैं,
mixed venom
ये
with our
सिर्फ
waters.
रूलिंग हमारे
We've
मंत्री जी
broken
थे
rocks to coal
और कुछ
mine.
नहीं,
We've
हम
slashed
लोग
trees
आधा
with
ध्यान ही
the
दे रहे,
heat of
आधा ध्यान
iron.
नहीं कर रहे।
We've quite literally broken mountains itself, and world leaders and corporations like Adani are still not satisfied. What's worse is that those demanding that our homes, our waters, and our commons be left alone are being punished for it. We have been jailed, we've been beaten, we've been starved and laid siege to. And these are the people who are the true owners of the land, but we refuse to do nothing about it. We don't have the privilege to stop doing what we are doing. Our existence is political, and so is the fight for our home. And despite the very, very gory situation in India, my hope comes from the people who dare reimagine a world beyond the binaries, a world where all sentient beings are chosen over all else. And I don't expect change to come from world leaders who lie about freedom of speech at the G7 while arresting anyone who has a different perspective in their homeland. I don't put my hopes in the hands of colonizers who choose war without a second thought. I choose to put my faith in my people who have continued to rise at every single injustice. And there are many of those. And there are many of those people in this call itself. And it's such an honor for me personally to be sharing stage with them. And change has already started. Change has come from these people, with our farmers who continue to strike at the capital, with our Adivasis who continue their resistance despite everything they've had to face, and with our students who have been continuing their fight despite wrongful incarceration for what they've done. And the main challenge, I think, that we face for a better world, an equitable world, is the lack of political will to make it happen. The current regime and any regime that has come before us has profited way too much from the suffering of people. So they don't want it to change. They want the situation to get worse. With every tree they cut, the GDP increases a little bit, and their pockets grow bigger, and people have had to bear the cost of them lining their pockets. But what they need to know that is people are not going to stay silent, and we are going to ensure that climate action is taken, and the excessive need for silencing any ideas that is different from theirs will not hold us back. And what they don't realize is that they can put people behind bars, but they can't lock ideas up. And ideas can never be held back by bricks and iron, because ideas are in one person. And our love and our hope and our ideas and our resistance for a better planet, for a planet that is shared by so many others, that will never die, because our love is the one that crosses oceans, the one that breaks prisons, and the kind that saves the planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Disha. We are honored to have Soni Sori here speak to us next. She's an Adivasi land rights, women's rights, and prisoners' rights activist from Bastar, Chhattisgarh. She was arrested on false charges in 2011 and subjected to horrific violence in custody, and continues to be harassed by the police. She has fought tirelessly for other imprisoned women, including land rights defender Hidme Markam, who was arrested in March 2021 and is still in custody. सोनी जी, आप अपनी बात रखिए।
सब साथियों को जो जितने भी हम बात रखने के सोचेंगे, हम ऑलरेडी दयामणि दीदी ने बहुत कुछ चीजों को रखा है, और जो हम रखना चाह रहे हैं वही बातें, पूरी हमारे दिल की बातें आप लोग तक कहा है। लेकिन बस्तर की एक अलग ही एक चीजें हैं यहाँ जो होती है। अब हिडमे मरकाम के बारे में तो सभी लोगों को पता है, आप सबको पता है कि हिडमे कौन है, हिडमे किसके लिए लड़ती थी और किस बात की आवाज उठाई थी। आज उसको जेल की जगह पे जेल के सलाखों में डाल दिया गया। हिडमे पर्यावरण को लेकर लड़ाई करती थी। नंदराज पहाड़, जो नंदराज पहाड़ के लिए उन्होंने कम से कम 7-8 दिन तक का एक आंदोलन चला, जिसका लीडरशिप हिडमे मरकाम ने किया। और उसमें हम सब थे, सब लोगों ने मिलकर कम से कम 30,000 के आसपास पब्लिक पूरी हमारी आदिवासी जनता के साथ लड़ाई किया गया है कि ताकि नंदरा पहाड़ को, जो पहाड़ है उसमें माइनिंग अडानी करना चाहते थे, और वो भी बिना ग्राम सभा का, फर्जीवाड़ा ग्राम सभा करके। तो उसके लिए हम निर्णय मार्ग में बहुत बेहतरीन फाइटर बन के हम सब लेके लड़े, लेकिन आज हमारी इनमें बहन को सलाखों के इसमें डाला गया। अब हम उस बात की चिंता थी कि ये जो पहाड़ अगर खुद जाएगा, क्योंकि उस पहाड़ नंदरा जो पहाड़ है वो ऐसे जगह में बहुत ऊंचाई पे पहाड़ है, जब मानसून चलता है तो उस मानसून से एक टकराव होती है, उससे पानी बरसता है, और वो पानी जब बरसता है लाखों लोगों को एक जीवन का दान देता है, और वो एक स्रोत है, उस पहाड़ में पानी निकलने का स्रोत है, वो कहीं खत्म ना हो जाए। उस खत्म होने से कई हजारे हमारी नदियां सूख जाएंगी, हमारे जल जंगल जमीन सूख जाएंगी। इस तरह से इनमें मरखाम में उस तरह से लड़ने वाली एक हमारी इनमें बहन, इनमें साथी है। उसके साथ साथ कई लोग उस पहाड़ के लिए नक्सल के नाम से मार दिया गया, गुड्डी, फुर्दिया, लच्छू, ऐसे अनगिनत हमारे आदिवासी साथियों को। उन्होंने बस इस बात को कहा कि नहीं, हमारे जंगलों को मत काटो, हमारे पेड़ों को मत काटो, हमारे पहाड़ों को मत खोदो। इस बात की लड़ाई की।
Excuse me, we have an issue with the English translation. Are you able to speak more slowly, please? And we'll just give it 1 second and set up.
हाँ, तो इस तरह से चीजों के लिए लड़ाई करते हैं। आज यहाँ बस
This is the reason why we are fighting and protesting about that. Why are they putting poor people into the jails and prisons? For the only reason so that they can mine and use these big companies. We are saying, we are raising our voices, please let us protect our mountains, our hills and our rivers. There are many atrocities that are being committed. Somebody's nose has been cut off or their ears have been cut off, and this is the kind of violence we are experiencing. So many people that are being put into prisons. These are the type of things that are happening. We are Adivasis and we are joining in unison against big companies. There's been a lot of police forces that have been put against us. We are Adivasis. We unite and fight against these injustices. These are our rights, our way of life. Cars without number plates are being recognized or held up to suspicion. I've been in a prison cell. I've been in Hungary. I've fought against these injustices. I've not been afraid of going to prison. To fight for our land, our waters, our hills and mountains. We must protect our resources, our land, our way of life. Is it wrong to protect our lands and our waters and our way of life? Why are we are getting more and more diseases and illnesses, and this can be caused by the pollution and damage that the mining companies cause. But if we live in the jungle, we get clear air, clean air. We've lived with the land healthily for so long. Why are we being put into prison? Why are we being targeted? Why are we being shot at? Is that a negative point in us that this is being done? Well, when people are taken from their homes and killed, murdered for 3 lakh, 4 lakhs. In order to get our water, land, property into our own hands. We need to protect our jungles, our lands, our forests. Who will protect us? If a mother gives birth to a child and then ask, are you the mother of this child? This is what is said. We are Adivasis. We will give our lives for our land, jungles, and property.
सरेंडर करवा के उनके साथ रख के उनके साथ बलात्कार किया जाता है और ये कहा जा रहा है कि लड़का लड़की को एक साथ एक धंधे की तरह बनाया गया कितनी गुलामी कर
People continue to mess around with nature, destroying forests, digging mines and releasing pollution.
एक मिनट बाकी है।
सब साथियों से कहेंगे कि हमारे बस्तर की मानवता को कैसे बचाएं हम बस्तरवासियों को हमारी मानवता को पूरी आदिवासियों को उस मानवता के कैसे बचाएं क्योंकि हम लोग पर्यावरण को हमारी मानवता को आप लोग कैसे बचाइए कि हमारे घेरे में से बलात्कार हो रहा है रोजाना बहुत
Apologies, we're just losing some internet connection here. Ruby, get back in.
Johar, Soni ji. Apologies for the internet connectivity. We now move on to our last speaker, Keval Bharadia. Keval is a member of the South Asia Solidarity Group, an anti-imperialist, anti-racist organization based in the UK. He is an activist and political economist. He has worked in the finance sector for 15 years and is now a radical consultant advising on structural anti-racist and anti-capitalist policies for peace and justice. His recent work includes the development of transformative reparations policies for slavery, colonialism, and continued imperialism. Welcome, Keval. The time is yours.
Thank you to everyone attending today and all the technical staff and interpreters. And thank you to our strong and inspiring speakers. It is an honor to share this panel with people who have fought against the full power of India's authoritarian, fascist military state, a state that does so much to kill its people for corporate profits. I welcome you warmly and thank you from the deepest part of my heart for fighting and resisting in all our names. In the short time I have here today, I only want to make a few points that speak to my own experiences. My life as a senior manager working at the London Stock Exchange for 15 years, seeing the full scale and might of global capitalism and the violence it is capable of unleashing into every corner of the planet with impunity. And my life over the last 10 years since leaving the financial industry and trying to be part of the resistance to the most violent ideology of our time, capitalism and the imperialism it takes to enforce it. Narendra Modi should be known as the butcher of Gujarat and was even barred from coming into the UK for human rights abuses whilst he was chief minister there. As his power rose and with BJP propaganda, Prime Minister Modi is hailed as the development man, bringing electrification and sanitation to villages and cleaning up dirty money and corruption. Hundreds of news channels and thousands of WhatsApp messages and hundreds of thousands of social media posts push these lies into every home in India each day. Sadly, most NGOs and charities are complicit in making the situation worse. Many of them believe that international development can somehow liberate people under a regulatable capitalism. NGOs and charities who are not explicitly anti-capitalist are doing a disservice to the people they claim to be supporting and allowing at a fundamental level capitalist propaganda, exploitation, and atrocities to grow and grassroots revolutionary resistance to become weaker. So we are extremely grateful to Survival International for helping to bring this event together and joining the fight to dismantle the hegemonic political and economic system that is at the root cause of people's suffering. It is the logic of capitalism that drives governments to allow for the state murder and rape of people defending their land. Neoliberal governments who leverage and amplify religious and racial hatred and division, who allow for new fossil fuel mining and burning in the global south when Europe have banned it. That is racial capitalism in action, reminding us that there is no ethical production or consumption under capitalism when understood historically and globally. Banks anywhere in the world are allowed to funnel money into any mining project using an unlimited and sophisticated array of financial structures and technical instruments. The money supply is endless because the system allows for the creation of money at the press of a button. Once it passes through a mining project, trillions of dollars flow into state-sanctioned tax havens to avoid hyperinflation. Who uses tax havens? Shareholders that include corporate owners like Adani and politicians like Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha. What it means is this: the same cartel of people own the banks and the money printing machines, control public discourse, write the laws, and determine what's legal or not, and have a military industrial complex to make sure the pursuit of profit goes without interruption. As pointed out by previous speakers, the atrocities being carried out on Adivasi people is an ongoing genocide. A genocide that began when the Dutch and British East India companies arrived and began carving up land for capitalist production, organizing foods to be grown and goods to be manufactured, not for human needs, but for the wants of profit. All wealth is derived from the blood of slavery and colonialism, which Barclays Bank and Standard Chartered, two of the biggest banks in London, know very well. They are amongst the leading financiers of Adani. Collectively, international banks have provided $12 billion in loans and other forms of financing to Adani. Whilst most of Adani's financing comes from private banks in India, the UK is second, demonstrating the key role the UK still plays in imperialism, plunder, and profits. It demonstrates that UK financial capital and wealth, including UK pension money, is linked to Adani, and so is complicit in the atrocities you have heard here today. International banks have not turned down the chance of fossil fuel profit in India and know that the BJP has turned it into an authoritarian Hindutva corporate state where Muslims are lynched by Hindutva groups and are targeted in laws which disenfranchise them and are a prelude to ethnic cleansing. Scholars, journalists, and academics are gunned down by BJP-affiliated gangs. Human rights activists are thrown in jail for sedition and left to die. Farmers are run over and murdered by government officials for protesting the corporate takeover of India's food chain. Corporates and politicians have a two-sided approach to the population. They first cause mass dispossession and impoverishment through state terror and violence, taking land. They then round up their victims, pretending to be their saviors, either sending them into crowded, polluted cities to earn poverty wages and become consumers in order to maximize shareholder value, or get them into the military or RSS, where they start a process of indoctrination into fascistic Hindutva ideology at RSS boarding schools and camps, providing basic substance and training. The aim is to ensure there is the next generation of RSS foot soldiers and an army of people who are able to terrorize villages during election time to guarantee a vote for the BJP, to keep the myth of liberal democracy alive. We are at the stage of capitalism where it needs fascist authoritarianism for its next cycle of capital accumulation. Government forces and private sector militia will continue firing until every inch of earth is privatized, dug up, and exploited for profit, until nothing is held in common ownership, and we are all subservient to capitalism. I want to end by encouraging us here in the UK to think about fighting for revolutionary grassroots reparations with surgical precision to enable people to recover from colonialism, stopping imperialism, and dismantling capitalism, to recover from the genocides, famines, and loss of cultures, and the theft of land and resources that are now under private ownership. We need to target the financial system, laws, institutions, and apparatus that give capitalism its powers and build something social, collective, and custodial in its place. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Keval. Thank you very much to all our panelists. And we now have some time for the audience to engage with our speakers. So Ananya would also help me pull out those questions to be directed to our speakers. The first one we have is for Phillip. And to Phillip, the question is, what can people around the world do to help the Adivasi resistances? Do we have Phillip on the call? Phillip Kujur जी, आपके लिए एक सवाल है. Okay, I don't think we have Phillip. So you can write your questions in the chat. Ananya, are you able to see any of it?
Hi, yes, I'm just currently looking, filtering through the questions, sorry.
Right,
Yeah,
I mean, there was a question for Phillip, but
I can see that question. So I can go on to the next one in the meantime.
Or maybe we could ask Dayamani ji to answer this. So could the interpreters please ask Dayamani ji? The question again is, what can people around the world do to help the Adivasi resistances? Dayamani ji, आपके लिए सवाल है.
हेलो हेलो
जी जी जी.
हाँ, एक बार हिंदी से सवाल रिपीट कर दीजिए.
आदिवासी के लिए क्या कर सकते हैं? Could you please tell us what the question is again? Could you repeat the question again, please?
कि दुनिया में जो आदिवासी संघर्ष है, तो उस दुनिया के लोग इसमें जुड़ने के लिए क्या कर सकते हैं?
ये आज के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण सवाल हमने किया था और जिसको आप लोग भी मतलब इसको फिर से सवाल कर रहे हैं. एक तो आज के तारीख में जो हम कहते हैं कि ग्लोबल या तो डिजिटल इंडिया.
We have a global and digital world at the moment. And we need to get the Adivasi people involved in this, into the digital world. We need to be able to use social media and work with the digital world. However many movements are happening in the world, we need to nationally and internationally connect. We can see multinational companies and those that are trying to loot lands and people.
जो संविधान के पर हमारा ये है विश्वास है.
However many people we have or how many people we can trust in, we need to make the people's movement more stronger. We need media support. Wherever we are, we need the entire of India, the entirety of India. We need a global. We need a platform. We need to take this to a platform where we can be supported and be united. So that we can, as one, take this forward, and this is of utmost importance.
शुक्रिया दयामणि जी, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. फिलिप कुजूर जी, आप हैं? अच्छा, कोई बात नहीं. Ananya, can we take the next question?
हेलो.
Oh, Phillip जी.
क्या मैं जोड़ सकता हूँ?
जी जी.
May I join the chat?
एक तो है कि दुनिया में जहाँ भी आदिवासी लोग हैं अपना
Wherever in the world there are Adivasi people, they are fighting their fight. They're fighting for their lives, for their jungles, for their property, and they are fighting the war against the multinational companies. It is in the world, and the people who are thinking about nature and the environment and are paying attention to the environment, and it's such a big thing, but they're not always getting all the information. They worry about their water, their land, their property, their water and their homes. But whatever information or policies that they can intervene in, whatever is happening grassroots, you need to know what the strategies are at the grassroots level, as Soni Ji mentioned, that they are totally terrorized in their areas. And how they are frightening, scaring the Adivasi people and what is happening on the ground. And this information should go right to the top and where the policy holders and makers are. Whatever information they get should come from the grassroots. And that is a special relationship. And we need support to build that relationship, so the voices are heard up above.
The next question, ready? Okay, on the chat, I think I see a question for Priya. The question is, could you explain how green technologies like solar power is being implemented and how does it affect Adivasi communities? Thank you, Priya.
Yeah, so much has been said and touted about the green technology, especially solar and wind as the solution, and large scale solar and wind as the solution. But one needs to really understand that in India, at least from the whole perspective of India, there is there's a lack of a regulatory framework currently. Everything that is green, which is solar and wind, it gets single window clearances. Everything is welcome. Whereas we don't look at the socio-ecological impacts of these large scale green technologies, basically. Solar, for example, is it's a land intensive thing. So if you want to set up a solar plant, it requires that you have huge tracts of land taken away from communities, from Adivasis, from Dalits, to set up the solar plant in itself. So if you look at a solar plant in Karnataka, which has 13,000 acres of land has been taken on lease from communities, and that was farmland. So for solar, what happens is even to produce energy per megawatt, you require 2 to 2.5 hectares of land. So it's that kind of a land intensive business. And you have these big, large scale groups like Adani coming in and engaging in land grab. I showed you a slide in which, in Tirumani, basically you saw how in Tamil Nadu, Adani has really gone out and grabbed land. Basically, what Adani has done is basically it fooled people to sign on documents. People thought they were basically leasing out their land for 10,000 rupees. But what was actually happening was basically people who couldn't read and write, communities, they were basically signing on to a power of attorney. Adani basically, or agents of Adani, solar power, basically used these power of attorneys to transfer land in the name of a bogus company in Surat. This is just one example, and then after 3 transfers, what has happened is that the land is finally transferred in the name of Adani Power Limited in Kamudi. So this kind of large-scale land grab is happening in the name of solar. We have seen people and communities coming out and protesting against this. But what is happening is, when people protest, say, for example, solar land grab, everybody goes against them, says that, oh, you are against fossil fuel, now you're also against, green energy. But that's not the thing. That's the reason why we need to put social justice, land rights at the center of this transition. It's not just about transitioning from fossil fuel to renewables, but how does this transition happen? If Adani is going to set up a solar plant the same way as it operated and set up a mine in Jharkhand, then there is a problem. And this problem arises because of the system in which, the capitalist system in which, profit-oriented system in which everything is operating. You asked specifically about Adivasi's rights. In Bhima Shankar in Maharashtra, we have seen Suzlon setting up windmills in the forest. What happened is that, the Adivasi communities who resides on the outskirts of that forest and depend on that forest for their livelihoods, they were not consulted. And this whole Suzlon basically set up windmills there. After setting up windmills, they built roads there, and they also built a boundary wall which prevented communities from going into the forest and collecting firewood, collecting non-timber forest produce. So, and if you look, when we went into those villages and we started talking to the community, we realized that the Forest Rights Act was not implemented at all in that region. So there are these violations, particularly in wind. You will find that Forest Rights Act is violated, communities' rights over forest, because wind mills usually come on hillocks and, forest lands.
Priya, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. If you can just have your last words in here.
There is land grab mostly that's been seen.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for cutting you short. We've run out of time practically, but the conversation still continues, and there are many platforms on which this is actually going to continue, and it's all there in the chat. I'm going to call on Ananya to just wrap up the session. Thank you very much.
So thanks, Ruby, and thanks so much to all our speakers. You've all been absolutely fantastic. I know this has been a very hectic and very rushed session, but rest assured that this conversation can continue. I know we have a lot of questions on the chat about a lot of issues about how we can take this further, the role of NGOs and such like that. And I've posted the links to the SASG's South Asia Solidarity Group's social media if you want to continue conversations with us there. There's also the People's Summit Slack for the COP26 Coalition Slack for the general discussion as well. So I want to say a massive thank you to everyone, and we'll keep on fighting these struggles in solidarity. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Could whoever it is that's got the recording running stop that now, please?